Hello? Do you want to be on camera? No, she does not. I'm gonna respect her boundaries and not make her be on camera. Hello, how's it going? I have not made a video for a very long time. Not very long. It's been a while. I don't know. I feel out of practice and disoriented, so I'm gonna be talking very quietly because it's late at night. Hopefully that's not annoying because I kind of hate ASMR. I read only 4 books in March, which is a very low number for me, but it's okay. I was actually spending a lot of my free time watching foreign films, which is something that I kind of used to love doing, but fell out of habit doing, I guess, or I fell out of the habit of watching them. Honestly, I think I really like foreign films because you have to read the subtitles, and I love reading, and so it feels like the combination of like reading a book and watching a movie in a really, I don't know, magical way. Anyway, I read some pretty good books in March. It's definitely been a quality over quantity situation, although the one that I read most recently, which I guess maybe I'll talk about first, I actually did not love this one. This is Perfection by Vincenzo Latronico. This book has been pretty popular recently. It came out, I think, in 2022, but it was had its first English translation in maybe 2025, translated from Italian by Sophie Hughes. I saw a lot of good stuff about this book, but ultimately I was pretty underwhelmed by the story. We're following Anna and Tom. They're an expat couple living in Berlin. They're from somewhere in southern Europe. I don't think they really identify where they're from. Presumably Italy, maybe. So Anna and Tom moved to Berlin as kind of the first wave of digital nomads, before digital nomads were really a thing. Think like kind of early internet job era. We follow their life in Berlin and across other European countries as they're very like dissatisfied with themselves and with their life. They're kind of constantly looking for something. They're searching for perfection. They're searching for a sense of fulfillment and purpose that is just not there for them. The book is less than 200 pages, but it kind of goes very quickly from the sort of dawn of internet work culture into basically right before the pandemic. So we see like the early days of social media and how Anna and Tom start comparing their lives to other people on social media, as well as how they present their own lives on social media and how it's very fake and this like image of perfection that's not realistic. And then we follow them into later years, I think kind of maybe like 2015 onward, as there's an increasing sense of disillusionment with the internet, and the image is broken for them. They aren't satisfied anymore. They're entering their 30s or getting close to 40 and feeling pretty directionless and purposeless. This book feels like a documentation of a very specific kind of affluent, or not necessarily really affluent, but semi-affluent, privileged Western European, or just generally kind of Western couple. It's speaking to that very like specific type of experience and the kind of malaise that can go with that lifestyle and with that life experience. I think the author does a good job of depicting that life and that experience, but I don't know that they contribute anything meaningful to the conversation. There's that idea, this book is not a satire, but I think of that concept where if you're writing a satire, it has to be sufficiently removed from the thing you're satirizing, otherwise you're just replicating that thing. This kind of feels like that feels like a relevant analysis here, because it's a very realistic depiction of Anna and Tom and these types of people and these types of experiences, but it's just a depiction of that, and it's not saying anything about it. So there's no commentary on it that was particularly insightful. There's no real sense of humor that was interesting. It felt like kind of a flat documentation of a very specific type of person in a very specific period, and that's it. It had nothing else to offer. So I don't know, really fell flat for me. Kind of surprised that this one has been really enjoyed by people. It got, publishing from NYRB Classics. So also, the one other thing that I will say is the book is pitched as exploring globalization and homogenization, but it doesn't address the fact that the homogenization of experience is pretty limited to a type of person in an affluent condition. It does kind of acknowledge that affluence is required for the sort of homogenization that Anna and Tom experience, but it touches on that idea so lightly and so shallowly that it felt like it missed a huge area of exploration that would have made the book more interesting. So yeah, probably gonna sell this one pretty quickly. This book I enjoyed quite a bit more, and was I didn't love it in the end, but at least it had something kind of interesting going on. This is Audition by Katie Kitamura, I believe it's pronounced. The way that it's pitched is intentionally obscuring parts of the plot, so it's kind of hard to talk about, but I think I saw someone describe it as a Mobius strip of a book. The first and the second half of the book kind of loop together in an interesting experimental stylistic way. But it's really an exploration of identity. I think it also explores the narratives that we tell ourselves about our lives. These are all themes that I really love in books and match the description of some of my favorite books. I think in here, the experimental stylistic structuring of the story kind of overshadows the thematic elements. The experimentalism is interesting, but not necessarily strong enough to compensate for kind of middling thematic exploration. I want to read more from this author, though. I believe she wrote like 3 other books, maybe kind of thematically similar to this book. I'd be really curious to see how she explores these ideas in a different context. And I love a writer who's like going to take a risk in their work. So even though this didn't fully work for me, I think it was really interesting and exciting. It's always exciting to find a book that like is doing something different. I also read Rosemary's Baby. I got this from the library on a whim. I didn't realize that this was actually a book first. I gotta be honest. I knew of the movie. I have not seen the movie, although I want to watch it now. Yeah, I didn't know this was a book, so that was kind of cool to discover. This is about Rosemary and her husband. I can't remember his name. They're a young couple living in New York. They move into this new building that's kind of, it has a dark history. It's kind of notorious for having some dark things happen there, but they're really excited to move into this apartment. For much of the story, we're following from Rosemary's perspective as she's kind of increasingly uneasy in this new space. She's aware of the apartment's history, and so she's kind of questioning herself. She's like, don't be silly, don't let these rumors of a dark history ruin your time here. This is a beautiful place that you want to be. So she's trying to convince herself that everything is fine, but increasingly it seems like something creepy or dark is happening. The neighbors are weird, they're kind of invading her space. She has evidently this really dark, disturbing dream that really unsettles her. And everything kind of starts to spiral when she eventually gets pregnant. So Rosemary and her husband don't have any kids at the beginning of the book. She finally gets pregnant and is really excited, and that's when everything kind of really goes crazy in here. It was also interesting to think about how the anxieties of this book today might have influenced the story itself. So it takes place in the 60s. Vietnam is happening in the background. I don't know when the book was published, but I imagine it was around the 60s as well. And there's certain kind of like cultural anxieties that you can feel in this book, like the Vietnam War, maybe even some fears related to certainly fears related to the family unit and the nuclear family, as the idea of the nuclear family was starting to crumble a little bit in the 60s. I think you can feel that in this story. So that was really interesting. The one other thing that I will say, which this isn't a spoiler, I really want Yorgos Lanthimos, I always forget if it's an M or an N. I want Yorgos to adapt this book. I know there's already an adaptation. I haven't seen it. I think it's a really beloved adaptation. But there's like some very specific narrative reasons that I think Yorgos would be an amazing director for this book. I could see him doing like a modern version of it or something, and it could be really, really fucked up, and I would love it. If you've read this book, let me know what you think. If you think Yorgos Lanthimos would be a good director, because yeah, I think so. Okay, the last book I want to tell you about, I read The Eye by Vladimir Nabokov, or as I learned from some Russian-speaking friends, Vladimir Nabokov. You emphasize often in Russian, I guess you emphasize the second syllable or something. Anyway, Vladimir Nabokov. I have not read anything else by him. Famously, of course, the author of Lolita, which I'm scared but interested to read. The Eye is about a guy named, what is his name? Smurov? That's how I'm going to pronounce it with my accent. This guy, Smurov, who he is living in Berlin, I want to say. I keep forgetting. Okay, yeah. So Smurov is living in Berlin, I think just after the Russian Civil War in the 1920s. And he's kind of depressed. He doesn't have great prospects in life. And one day he decides to kill himself. So he gets his gun, shoots himself, and then he's convinced that he's dead, but it's obvious to us as the readers that he's still alive. He thinks that he's dead. He thinks that he successfully shot himself. He did successfully shoot himself, but he didn't die. And so as he's in the hospital and then convalescing and leaving the hospital, he's convinced that everything he's experiencing is happening in his imagination, that within this kind of moments after his death, his mind is going crazy and he's imagining his entire experience. So the narrator is convinced that he is experiencing something like the afterlife, but he's actually in the real world experiencing real life. As a result of being disconnected from reality in this way, he starts kind of watching himself from this outside perspective and thinking obsessively about how other people perceive him. The title, The Eye, actually comes, it's not a translation, but it comes from the original Russian title. The author wrote about it a little bit. So the original Russian title of the book is Suglidartai. Nabokov says the Russian title was originally an ancient military term meaning spy or watcher, but neither of these extend as flexibly as the Russian word. As a result, he decided to use just the simple word "I" to title this book. So we have this idea in the title of a watcher, somebody examining or spying on or watching their own life. Smurov is kind of a watchman of himself, and he's really examining himself, and it's a very obsessive story. Speaking of the afterlife, that actually connects to one of my favorite movies that I watched last month. It's titled The Afterlife by Hirokazu Koreeda. Let me make sure the pronunciation. Okay, I think it's pronounced Hirokazu Koreeda. Yeah. This is a really fascinating Japanese film about the afterlife. In this exploration or theory of the afterlife, people who have passed away go to this kind of... The setting actually wasn't that important to the story, but it looks like this abandoned kind of warehouse or school, maybe. They go to this kind of building somewhere in the spiritual realm, and they're told that they have to choose one memory from their life, the most important memory from their life, and the staff in this afterlife setting will try to recreate their memory on film, and then once they watch the film of their memory, they will pass on into the final afterlife, where basically they relive that memory for eternity. The movie itself includes a lot of really compelling monologues from these characters, the people who have passed away. We see a lot of them talk pretty in depth about... Some of them talk kind of about their whole life story to a certain extent, and then some of the characters are focusing on really specific themes from their life, and we get these just kind of single static shots of these people talking, and it felt so real and realistic, and it felt like we were really watching real people talk about parts of their life. I actually wondered while watching it if these were actors or if they were people just like hired off the street to talk about their real experiences. And I looked it up, and yeah, apparently some of the people acting in this movie are actually just talking about their real life. It combines documentary and a scripted fictional film to create the final product. We see the joys and the small joys that people identify as being really meaningful from their lives. We also, kind of on the other hand, see some characters who feel like they wasted their life and didn't have any meaningful experiences. So yeah, it was really, really beautiful, very existential film. I also just loved it visually. Nothing was particularly visually striking in the movie, but it came out in, I think, 1995, so it was shot on film, and it's just really beautiful to see the film grain. I also wonder if a lot of it was shot with natural lighting in this setting, because the lighting in it is quite beautiful and minimal as well. Highly recommended. Really fantastic. In the Criterion Collection for a reason. Another one of my favorite movies from this month, maybe actually my favorite, I finally watched Anatomy of a Fall, written by Justine... Who was it written by? Written by Justine Triet and Arthur Harari, it looks like. This one you might have heard of as well. Very, very famous. I think the main actress, Sandra Euler was nominated for Best Actress. I think she should have won the Oscar for this movie. It's really incredible. The movie is about Sandra, I can't remember the character's name, but it's about Sandra and her son and her husband. And at the beginning of the movie, her husband dies. He is found dead on the ground outside of their cabin in the mountains. And right away the question is, was he pushed by somebody, or did he fall, or did he commit suicide? The movie ends up being this really tense exploration of the truth of what we believe when the truth is so deeply unknown. We're following, I'm going to call her Sandra because that's the actor's name. I can't remember the character. Sorry, my cats. What are you doing? Okay. We're following the court case as they're in the courtroom trying to... Eventually, the wife is accused of murder. The prosecution says, "You murdered your husband." She maintains her innocence throughout the entire thing and says that she thinks... She's actually not sure what happened, but she's just like, "I did not push him, that's for sure." So we're following her testimony in the court. We're also following her son. Her son is maybe 12, 10. He's very young, and he's dealing with his father having just died tragically and horrifically, and then also he's dealing with questioning if his mom killed his dad. He really doesn't know what to believe. He's not sure if he can trust that his mom didn't do this, and oh my gosh, the kid in this movie, the child actor, he's so, it was so sad to watch him. I don't really cry at movies. The one art form that ever really makes me cry is music. But I cried at this movie because this child actor was so excellent, and it was so sad to watch him grapple with this uncertainty. And uncertainty really is the main theme of the movie. It's about belief, it's about trust, and how do we decide, how do we move forward with our lives when we can't actually make sense or find the truth of a situation. It's an extremely dialogue heavy movie, mostly in French, although also in English, and the fact that it's 2.5 hours long, and the fact that it was compelling the entire time is so impressive from a writing standpoint. It's one of those movies that makes me just jealous, and yeah, that's not a great response and doesn't make me sound like a great person, but I got to turn that jealousy into motivation to make my own writing good. But yeah, hearing writing that good, seeing writing that good in a film is kind of overwhelmingly impressive. So I also watched Flux Gourmet by Patrick Strickland. This is the writer-director behind a lot of different movies, but the other one that I've seen from him was In Fabric. If you've seen In Fabric, you have a good idea of what this movie is going to be. In fact, there's a lot of crossover in the casting from that movie to Flux Gourmet. Flux Gourmet, how do I describe this bizarre film? It takes place at like an artist retreat, an artist residency, where, how do they even describe them? Oh yeah, they describe themselves as a culinary collective. It's set at an institute dedicated to culinary performance. So in the world of this movie, I guess the idea is that culinary performance is this like widespread thing. There's this implication that there are a lot of culinary collectives in the world, and what these culinary collectives are doing is like bizarre performance art involving food and music, and kind of the intersection of food and music. They're like blending stuff up in a blender and plugging in wires to the blender to like get the sound frequency, and then they turn that into some like surreal ambient music throughout their performance. So we're watching them at this culinary residency thing as they are like very dysfunctional. It's a group of 3 people, and they're very dysfunctional. They're kind of constantly fighting with each other about these things that don't really make any sense. Obviously satirizing the art world in many ways, but the satire of it is like so extreme that it's almost divorced from reality entirely. So it feels like something beyond satire, honestly. I think the best way to express the tone of this movie is to say that this film involves a publicly performed colonoscopy. A character has a colonoscopy in front of an audience on camera for us to watch as well. The other movie that I watched this month, probably my least favorite out of the batch, was Madeline's Madeline, So the movie was written and directed by Josephine Decker, but a lot of it actually involved, as far as I understand, it involved a lot of improvisation and like workshopping with the actors to kind of formulate the rough narrative. As far as I understand, Josephine Decker worked with the cast for like 2 years prior to filming to kind of figure out the structure of the film and figure out some of the scenes. So it was kind of this collaborative effort that involved a lot of improvisation, and that improvisation was brought into the film itself. So the movie is kind of, the improvisation is kind of a metatextual element of the story, because the story itself is about this, I think she's like 16, this 16-year-old actress named Madeline. I believe that's her name. Wait, now I'm forgetting. This 16-year-old actress who is working with this acting troupe, this acting collective in New York. They're doing like live performance, and it's very experimental and edgy. And Madeline is like a child surrounded by all of these adults in this very kind of boundary pushing, envelope pushing environment where boundaries between the self and the character are being crossed. Boundaries among the people in this group are kind of, they break down very easily because they're spending so much time together and because they're experimentally working through these characters that they're playing. It's not a great, safe environment for a teenager to be in. I'm saying boundaries a lot, but there's not healthy boundaries in this acting group. And so Madeline's personal life starts to kind of seep into her acting life. The director and the leader of this acting group starts to kind of pull from Madeline's personal experiences to inform the work that they're creating. And again, boundaries are blurred and questionable things start to happen. The movie was really compelling for me like 90% of the way through. There was this extreme sense of like increasing tension as Madeline's life the boundaries between her acting and her life start to blur, which is really interesting to watch. The relationship between the director of this group and Madeline was deeply uncomfortable, very intentionally so, deeply disturbing in a really compelling and important way. I think there's a lot of parallels between the story in this film and real life story of young actors in Hollywood. So that felt important in that way. Unfortunately, I think the shortcoming of the movie is its lack of a defined script. As the film starts to wrap up, it starts to feel, you can feel collectively, you can feel the actors and the director kind of grasping at straws, trying to figure something out, some way to wrap up this story. The improvisation, rather than being interesting, starts to feel directionless and confused. It doesn't have a clear goal or aim. And so when the movie ends in this kind of inconclusive, tepid finale, the movie really lost me overall. I am still interested in the other work that Josephine Decker has done. I don't know if I know any of it. I haven't looked it up yet. Also, it's a visually pretty beautiful film. I wonder if it was shot on film. Okay, cool. It was shot on 16 millimeter. So yeah, visually it is a very beautiful movie. So it had that going for it. So, okay, was there anything else to talk about? I think that's it for now. Yeah. 4 books, 4 movies. Cool. It was nice to talk again. This was fun to kind of get back into this. I don't know when I'll see you again, but maybe at some point in the future. So, all right. Goodbye.